What's up, everyone? Welcome to Among the Fence, my YouTube channel where I do music reviews. My name is Aaron, and welcome to the first installment of my classic review series. I'm going to be going back and checking out some of the early metalcore and deathcore albums that basically shaped the music that we love today. This isn't going to be like a classic review, as in I'm going to be going back and listening to Led Zeppelin. It's mostly going to be like early 2000s, maybe reaching 2010s, and maybe going back into the 90s. I am going to be doing stuff on like Lamb of God, Trivium, maybe even some Pantera. I'm going to be starting a playlist for this as well. So I've already done a review on a Pantera album that is going to be added to it, even though it's not technically part of my classics review since I just now started doing it. And also, just because I do like a band's third or fourth album doesn't mean I'm not going to go back and eventually do their other stuff. This is going to be completely randomized. There's no like rhyme or reason to it. I'm not starting off with the album that I feel like is the most influential or anything like that. It's basically going off of what I feel. But for today's review, we're going to be checking out the album Sting of Conscience by the band Unearth. For those of you who don't know who they are a metalcore band from Massachusetts. They started in 1998, and they've released 8 studio albums. I did a review on their last one, The Wretched the Ruinous. Go check it out if you haven't yet. But this is their debut album, which came out in 2001. It's the album that would eventually lead to The Oncoming Storm and The March, which are just monuments of freaking metalcore albums. It was produced by Adam D from Killswitch Engage, who basically produced just about every metalcore album back in the day. And also, of course, being their first album, has all of their original band members. The rhythm guitarist who actually just left, I believe, this year, their drummer who left a little bit after this album, and their bass player who sadly passed away. And these guys really helped push metalcore into the mainstream, and they were heavily involved in the metalcore movement of the early 2000s. I feel like they don't get enough credit for it, because most of the time when people talk about the pioneers of metalcore, you get Killswitch Engage, As I Lay Dying, I guess you could say A Day to Remember in some cases. Some people even say August Burns Red, We Came as Robin. You just never really hear Unearth. In fact, I didn't really know who Unearth was until like around 2010, and I was just shocked because I was like, this is a cool new band, but come to find out they were there basically at the beginning. So yeah, I just feel like they don't get enough credit for it. But anyways, let's jump into this album. The album opens up with the song My Heart Bleeds No Longer that has a really dissonant riff, and it's super chunky. The interlude before the chorus has a good melody that slows down once the chorus starts. The breakdown is pretty straightforward. This is basically what you would expect from early 2000s. Honestly, out of this whole song, I really just enjoy the melody. The vocals are really typical as far as metalcore goes. They have like a Shadows Fall quality to them. Then we have the song One Step Away, which keeps that heavy riffage going. The chorus, I guess you would call it, has an open sounding arpeggio. It has a lot of room to breathe. The riff at the beginning fades away and it becomes more of a chug. The bridge is really sick though, and I really enjoyed the drums because I felt like they stood out to me the most. The mix on this just doesn't really do them justice. It's really hard to hear what's going on. I had to listen to this a few times before before the drums caught my ear and I started even listening to them. The guitar solo, I felt like it was just all right. But after the guitar solo, mostly the closing part, it sounds fantastic. The melody's great. All the riffage is great. Even the vocals kind of shine through a little bit more for me. I'm going to jump ahead to my favorite song on this album, My Desire, which has this slow droning guitar in the intro. It ends up being pretty technical. I would have really enjoyed this if it continued past the intro and went into the verses, but you don't always get what you want. The dissonance hits really hard in the chorus though, which sounds so good. And I'm glad that the riffs continued past basically just 2 notes or 2 chords, which really helps me not to feel bored in this because this band has a lot of different sections to their songs. And when they're all just kind of 2 or 3 chords over and over again, it makes it feel like they're doing the same thing over and over again. So it makes all these different transitions in this song that much more entertaining. The breakdown is unique as well, as it's a little bit quicker than what we're used to on this album. The clean section makes all the heavier moments on this stand out so much more as well. I wasn't really expecting the clean singing and the clean guitar tone at the same time. It sounds absolutely brilliant. Then we have the song Only the People, which I feel like the drums really carry the song for the most part. The vocals seem like they're kind of doing their own thing, and the music seems like it's kind of doing its own thing, which really helps captivate me, having the contrast between the two. The guitar solo, unfortunately, sounds like something we've already heard from all the other songs on this, and honestly, it went on for a little bit longer than I cared for, which seems to be sort of the case with most of these songs. Fuel the Fire has a lot of aggression as it starts off with a fast dynamic guitar riff and drum work. The main melody doesn't really come in until the chorus, and the breakdown again is mostly just chugs, which is just what you did back in 2001. But the second breakdown does get more creative before the outro, which sounds absolutely brilliant. Then we have the title track song, Stings of Conscience, which sounds like they're playing the solo from One Step Away for the intro in this song. The riff in the verse is actually pretty good as it's paired with this melody. And the chorus, it sounds more like a breakdown than anything else due to its openness and just really aggressive trugs. The instrumental makes for a really nice break before it goes back into another mosh-inducing chorus. And the last minute of this song is just super nostalgic because it sums up basically the metalcore sound of the early 2000s, and I absolutely love it. Vanishment is another one of my favorite songs on this album as it keeps the dynamics and the harmonies between the two guitars going. The verses have a really strong hardcore feel to it that I enjoyed. The breakdown doesn't really have any surprises, but the interlude after it is absolutely beautiful. And then we have the song Shattered by the Sun, which has an intro that makes you want to get up and start moshing around your room. The verses keep this vibe going while the chorus is slowed down and give you a lot of room to breathe. I really like the solo as it's played over the vocals, and the outro is really vulnerable, and I'd say it's probably one of the best moments on this album. Monition, I believe that's how the song is pronounced, has this really ominous intro to it, which is kind of nice to hear them change the atmosphere in this song, because up until this point I didn't really realize it, that the atmosphere has been basically the same. But in this song it gets kind of dark and I enjoyed it a lot, but it also doesn't last for very long because as soon as it gets to the verses, it goes right back into a standard metalcore riff. The chorus is really close to a breakdown once again, but the breakdown is actually more gnarly. The triplets hit really hard, and the second breakdown is heavy. Even though it's really just generic and it's dated, it still sounds great. And it's still, I don't know, it still makes you want to start throwing your fist up in the air. And then we have the closing track, Stronghold, which brings in this really cool melody, and it brings back the hardcore influences, mostly in the verses. It comes back around in the chorus, and it has this really cool, like, mellow vibe to it. I enjoyed quite a bit. The spoken word in the bridge has this good build as it goes into the breakdown before a very abrupt end. Metalcore albums back in the day didn't really, I personally feel like they didn't really know how to finish off an album, especially one that's a little bit more themed. This is, I don't know, it's kind of politically-ish in a way, and it almost leaves you hanging for sure. So I enjoyed this album quite a bit, even today, but back in 2001, this was absolutely great. It's what every metalcore kid wanted. Fast, heavy riffs. It's got someone yelling at you. It's got cool little melodies played throughout here and there. It's got some dissonance, mostly just the heavy, just slow, mid-ish tempo breakdowns, which are just fantastic. And I still, like I said, enjoyed it for the most part. The second half of this album definitely outshines the first half as it has more variety. And the cool thing about this band is that they haven't really changed much over the years. Their last album, which I said I already reviewed, again, if you haven't seen that, go check it out, The Wretched, The Ruinous. It's very similar to this. It's a lot more polished. The vocals are a lot, not cleaner, but it's mostly the production that everything's it's just a little tighter. Things feel a little loose in this album for sure. And listening to this album, I gotta admit, today was a little bit more tiring than I remember it being. You realize how the lack of variety of riffs just stand out. It makes everything sound like they're kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again. The tone on the guitars are always the same. It's like they have 5150s or 6505s, and they just turn the distortion all the way up, didn't put a noise gate on it, and just down tune their guitars to drop C, because that's what everybody used back in the day, and just started chucking away without any regard for anybody's ears whatsoever. And not only that, but every song is almost 5 minutes long, which is pretty long. It makes it more apparent just how exhausting listening to this album really was. Back in the day, I probably would give this album like a low to mid 7.2 to 7.4, somewhere around there. But I gotta give Sting of Conscious by Unearth a 6.6 out of 10. And I want to add a disclaimer saying that this rating isn't really that serious, because a lot of this older stuff is going to be based on nostalgia for me or for you guys. If there's an album that I review that molded you and shaped you into who you are and what you like today, and I've never listened to it before, it's going to be really hard for me to really grasp it, especially if it was made like in 2002 and songwriting and production and everything has changed and gone beyond what we could have imagined what it would be back then. So again, this is just mostly just fun for me to talk about some of this older stuff and go back and listen to stuff I haven't listened to before. So again, take this all with a grain of salt. I hope you did enjoy this review. Leave a comment below letting me know what you thought of Stings of Conscience. Let me know what you would rate it, what your favorite song is. And I posted a list earlier of just different classic songs or bands and albums and stuff I plan on doing a review on. That list could obviously have more added to it. So if there's anything you want me to review, leave a comment below letting me know what it is. It'll be added to the list, and there's no rhyme or reason or order I'm doing it in. It's mostly just closing my eyes and pointing at the page, and that's what I'm going to do that day. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a like. If you hate it, feel free to give it a dislike. Either one is muchly appreciated. If you want to help support me and my channel, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell icon. Doing any of that stuff helps me out tremendously, and I appreciate you guys so much for sitting here listening to me talk about music. And I hope you have a good rest of your day or night, whenever you happen to be watching this. And I will talk to you guys next time.
I was trying, ignorant, kid relying on my parents' said to save me.